Business English Field Manual 10. Part 2. Presentation. Manual 1.
Hi everyone. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'd like to start with a quick self-introduction. Let me start by introducing myself. First of all, I'd like to briefly introduce who I am. Good morning. My name is Claire, and I'm with the marketing team at CL Solution. Today, I'll be talking about our new project. Today, I'm here to discuss our new project. Today, I'll walk you through our new project, what it is, why it matters, and what comes next. The purpose of today's presentation is to share our new project. Here's the agenda for today: background, timeline, and roles. Before we dive in, let me say a few words. Before we dive in, let me highlight today's goal. Just before we begin, here's something to keep in mind. To give you some context before we begin, please remember this point. Just before we begin, here's something important to keep in mind. This data is still confidential. Hi everyone. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Claire, and I'm with the marketing team at CL Solution. Before we dive in, let me say a few words. Please keep in mind that this strategy overlaps with the product launch schedule. To give you some context before we begin, the campaign was developed based on Q2 customer feedback.
Manual 2.
Here's what we'll be covering today. Here's a roadmap for today, so you can follow along easily. I've broken today's talk into 3 main parts. Today's presentation is divided into 3 sections: overview, key findings, and next steps. This is a quick snapshot of what we'll cover today. First, we'll start with the background. Next, I'll go over the current challenges. Finally, we'll look at possible solutions. First, let's begin with a quick update on our sales performance this quarter. Then, we'll discuss the action plans for the upcoming product launch. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I'll pause after each section for any quick questions. I'd be happy to take a couple of quick questions before we move on to the next section. Please save your questions for the Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions, please note them down and I'll address them during the Q&A. Hi everyone, thanks for being here today. Here's what we'll be covering today. 3 key points. We'll begin with a bit of background, then go over current challenges, and wrap up with some solutions.
Sounds good. Will there be time for questions?
Yes, feel free to ask at any time or during the Q&A at the end.
Perfect. That'll help us follow along more closely.
Manual 3.
Can I start with a question? What would you do in this situation? Ever wondered why this keeps happening? Why do you think this problem keeps coming back? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this? Let me share a surprising fact. Here's something you might not expect. Did you know that 70% of people actually ignore this step? Surprisingly, only 3 out of 10 people follow this process correctly. Here's an unexpected trend. Customer complaints actually dropped after fewer calls. Imagine you're in this situation. Picture this. You're launching a new product tomorrow. Let's all think about this for a moment. Let's take a mental walk through the customer journey. Let's put ourselves in the client's shoes for a moment. Hi everyone, can I start with a question?
Sure, go ahead.
What would you do if your product launch were tomorrow, but your team had no idea about the plan?
Wow, that'd be a disaster.
Let me share a surprising fact. 70% of product teams actually skip the internal alignment step. So imagine you're in that situation. Let's take a closer look at how we might solve it. Manual 4. Let me cut to the chase. To boil it down to one key point, it's simple. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that our sales grew by 15% this quarter. To boil it down, we need more resources to meet the deadline. This is the crux of today's talk. If you take away just one thing from this presentation, it's this. Everything else leads to this key idea. The crux of our strategy is customer trust. If you remember just one thing today, it's that alignment drives success. Here's why this really matters. The implications of this are huge. let me unpack why this is a game changer. Here's why this really matters. It cuts onboarding time by 30% and saves 50 million KRW per quarter. The implication is clear. We need to migrate before October 15 to avoid penalties. Let me cut to the chase. The crux of today's talk is how to keep our customers coming back. If you take away just one thing from this session, it's this. The easier the first step, the more people stay.
That makes sense. Can you give an example?
One-click sign-up works well. Here's why this really matters. If it feels complicated at first, people quit quickly.
Thanks for boiling it down so clearly.
Manual 5.
Let me show you some data to back this up. The numbers clearly support this point. Here's what the data tells us. The data shows a 25% drop in churn, which means our strategy is working. Here's what the numbers tell us. Customer satisfaction is directly linked to faster response times. Let me give you a quick example. This case really illustrates my point. A real-world case can explain it better. Let me give you a quick example from our client project last year. This real-world case shows how we reduced costs by 20%. This shows why the method actually works. So, what does this tell us? That this approach works. The results speak for themselves. The results speak for themselves. Our response time dropped from 24 hours to just 3. This shows why the method actually works. It increased customer retention by 15%. Let me show you some data to back this up.
Okay, simple numbers are always helpful.
This shows why the method actually works. Sales went up right after we tried it.
That's clear. Do you have a real-world case as well?
Yes, one store in Busan applied the same method and achieved great results.
The results speak for themselves then.
Manual 6.
Feel free to jump in if you have thoughts. If you agree, give me a quick nod or thumbs up. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Could I get a quick show of hands if you agree? Please let me know with a quick nod if everything's clear so far. Is everything making sense so far? Are we all on the same page? Should I pause here for any questions? If this is clear, could you give me a quick signal? Please raise your hand if you'd like me to slow down. That's a great question. Thanks for bringing it up. Interesting point. Let's explore that together. Thanks for the input. I'll get back to that in just a second. That's an important point. I'll follow up with more detail after the session. I really value that question. Let me circle back to it in a few minutes. Is everything making sense so far?
Yes, so far so good, but I do have one question.
Sure. Feel free to jump in.
On slide 3, what exactly does that number represent?
That's a great question. Thanks for bringing it up. Let me explain that part again, just to make sure it's clear. That number represents the growth rate of new customers over the past quarter.
Manual 7.
I'll give you a brief rundown of today's key takeaways. Here's a quick recap of the key points. So far, we've talked about 3 main things. Here's a quick recap. First, the background. Second, the challenges. And third, the solutions. Let me highlight today's key takeaway. Keep the first step simple. Here's how it looks in one chart. I've put everything together in this table. This visual gives you the full picture. I've put everything together in this table to make the comparison clearer. This visual gives you the full picture, from strategy to actual performance. This is what I want you to remember. Keep this in mind, it ties everything together. This is the heartbeat of the message. If you remember just one thing from today, let it be this. Everything we discussed points back to this central idea. All right, let me give you a brief rundown of today's key takeaways. So far, we've talked about 3 main things: our goal, the current status, and next steps. I've put everything together in this simple chart for you.
That's really clear. Thanks for organizing it like that.
This is the heartbeat of the message, moving forward as a team. If you remember just this one idea, we're on the right track.
Manual 8.
If there's one thing to carry with you, it's this. This idea is the thread that runs through everything. At the heart of it all, this is what matters most. This is the point everything rests on. In the end, this is the key takeaway. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to this one point. Let me bring us back to the anchor of today's message. Before we sign off, I'd like to leave you with this. The anchor of today's talk is innovation. It holds everything together. Before we sign off, keep in mind that collaboration is key. If this sticks with you after today, I've done my job. Let this be the echo you take with you. Keep this on your radar moving forward. Make sure this point stays with you as you plan ahead. I hope this becomes a guiding thought in your future work. Before we sign off, I want to circle back to one point. Branding consistency is about trust.
Agreed, that idea really runs through everything we've discussed today.
Exactly. If this one concept sticks with you after today, I've done my job.
I'll definitely keep that on my radar as we prep the fall campaign.
Great. Let this be the echo you take with you. Small details shape long-term perception.
Well said, thanks for driving that message home.
Manual 9.
That's a great question. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. Interesting point. Let's talk about that. That's an excellent question. I really appreciate you bringing it up. I was hoping someone would ask that. It's an important point. To help clarify, I'll start with a quick backstory. Before I answer that, here's something to consider. To clarify that, we need to look at this first. Let me frame this with some quick context first. To set the scene, here's how this issue came about. Let's take that offline after the session. Happy to continue the conversation after the session. We're short on time, but I'd love to dive deeper into that after the wrap-up. That's a great topic. We may need more time for it later. Let's park that idea for now and circle back once we finalize the main points. That's a great question. Thank you.
I was just wondering, how did your team handle the resistance to automation in the beginning?
I'm glad you asked that. To help clarify, I'll start with a quick backstory. In the early stages, we saw hesitation mainly due to fear of change, so we focused on small wins to build trust.
That makes sense. I have a follow-up question about how you trained your team.
That's a great topic. We may need more time for it later. Let's take that offline after the session.
Sure, happy to connect afterward.
Manual 10.
That brings us to the end of the presentation. That wraps up what I wanted to share today. We've covered a lot, so I'll stop here. That wraps up what I wanted to share today. I'll stop here before I say too much. We've covered a lot, so I'll stop here, but the story doesn't end here. Really appreciate everyone being here today. It's been great sharing this with you. It's been great sharing this with you. I hope some of these ideas spark new discussions on your teams. Thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you all for being such an engaged audience. Your questions made this session even better. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to talk more. Let's keep the conversation going, even after this session. Let's keep in touch. New ideas often come after the session. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later via email. I'm happy to hop on a quick call this week if you'd like to discuss it further.
That brings us to the end of the presentation. We've gone over a lot, from the initial idea to the unexpected turns we faced during rollout. Thank you all for sticking with me through the twists and turns. It's been great sharing both the wins and the missteps. We often learn more from the messy parts. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to continue the discussion either now or via email later. Once again, thank you for your time and attention.